Asmodeus is dangerous for a reason most demons are not. He does not arrive as a threat. He does not announce himself through fear, spectacle, or force. He does not tear through cities, possess strangers, or demand belief. If he did, he would be easier to resist, easier to name, easier to reject. Asmodeus enters where resistance is already lowered. He moves through permission. His influence does not begin with violence. It begins with familiarity, with closeness, with trust that already exists. He appears in spaces people believe are safe, relationships, desires, ambitions, moments of intimacy where defenses are relaxed because they feel unnecessary. Other demons are said to attack from the outside. Asmodeus works from within. This is what makes him uniquely dangerous. He does not need to corrupt what is broken. He prefers what is functional, what is loving, what is meaningful. He settles into bonds that matter and slowly alters their internal balance. Nothing looks wrong at first. In fact, things often feel more intense, more focused, more consuming. That intensity is mistaken for depth. Affection deepens into fixation. Care hardens into control. Desire becomes entitlement. And because each step feels justified, no alarm is triggered. Asmodeus does not convince people to abandon their values. He convinces them they are protecting them. His influence is subtle enough that those affected often believe they are acting rationally, even morally. Jealousy becomes vigilance. Possession becomes devotion. Domination becomes responsibility. By the time damage is visible, it is already embedded in behavior. This is why Asmodeus persists across cultures and centuries, while other demonic figures fade into metaphor. His domain does not rely on ancient belief systems or forgotten rituals. It relies on patterns that repeat wherever human attachment exists. He does not require summoning. He requires access. And access is freely given in moments of longing, insecurity, and unexamined desire. What follows in ancient texts is not the story of a monster attacking humanity, but of a force exploiting the structures humans build to connect with one another. Marriage, loyalty, love, ambition, identity. These are not weaknesses on their own, but they become vulnerabilities when intensity replaces balance. This is why historical accounts of Asmodeus rarely describe sudden catastrophe. They describe erosion, slow shifts, relationships collapsing without obvious cause, isolation growing while intimacy appears intact, damage accumulating beneath the surface until it becomes irreversible. To understand Asmodeus is not to ask what he does. It is to ask why he works, and to recognize that his greatest strength is not temptation, but patience. Asmodeus is often described simply as a demon of lust. This description is incomplete and in many ways misleading. Lust is not his domain. It is only one of his entry points. His true domain is attachment taken too far. Asmodeus governs the moment when desire stops being voluntary, when affection stops being generous, when connection stops allowing freedom and begins to demand ownership. He does not create longing from nothing. He intensifies what already exists until it overrides judgment. This is why his influence is so difficult to isolate. Everything he touches begins as something recognizable, even healthy. Attraction, commitment, ambition, loyalty. The problem is not the emotion itself, but the way it narrows perception. Under Asmodeus's influence, attention collapses inward. The object of desire becomes central. Everything else, friends, responsibilities, moral limits, moves to the periphery. What feels like devotion is often fixation. What feels like protection becomes surveillance. What feels like passion becomes entitlement. Control, in this system, does not arrive as force. It arrives as justification. A person influenced by Asmodeus does not believe they are acting out of excess. They believe they are acting out of necessity. They are not driven by cruelty, but by fear of loss. The need to secure, to bind, to ensure permanence at any cost. This is why ancient texts consistently place Asmodeus near the marriage bed, not the battlefield. His work does not require chaos. It requires intimacy. It requires a setting where boundaries are already softened by trust. Unlike demons associated with rage or destruction, Asmodeus thrives in stability. He does not shatter structures outright. He occupies them. Relationships, institutions, identities. He does not attack these from outside. He reshapes them internally until their original purpose is distorted. In this sense, Asmodeus functions less like an invader and more like a parasite of meaning. He feeds on significance. The more important something is to a person, the more leverage he gains. Love offers more access than hatred. Commitment offers more access than desire. Identity offers more access than impulse. This also explains why resistance often fails. Attempts to confront his influence directly are usually framed as betrayal or misunderstanding. The person under his domain feels justified. They feel right. Any challenge is interpreted as threat. The danger of Asmodeus is not that he overwhelms the will. It is that he aligns with it too closely. He makes harmful behavior feel like self-expression. He reframes obsession as authenticity. Control becomes care. Dependence becomes loyalty. And because these shifts happen gradually, they are rarely noticed until consequences appear. By the time destruction is visible, it no longer feels foreign. It feels earned. This is the domain Asmodeus governs. Not lust, but corrupted attachment. Not temptation, but permission. Not chaos, but focus narrowed to the point of collapse. With this domain defined, the next step is to examine how ancient sources recognize this danger and why they feared it enough to name it. Long before Asmodeus was crowned a king of hell in medieval grimoires, his danger was already recognized in much older traditions. These early accounts do not describe him as a flamboyant monster or a force of open destruction. They describe him as something far more unsettling, a presence that targets intimacy, interferes with union, and turns closeness into isolation. One of the clearest early warnings appears in the Book of Tobit, a Jewish text dating to the early centuries before the Common Era. In this account, a woman named Sarah is betrothed 7 times. Each time, her husband dies before the marriage can be consummated. The deaths occur without struggle, without explanation, and without visible cause. The text does not dwell on violence. It emphasizes pattern. 7 marriages, 7 deaths, no witnesses, no resistance. The absence of detail is deliberate. Whatever is happening operates inside the most private space, where no one else is meant to see. The force responsible is named Asmodeus, and his motive is not conquest, but possession. He has claimed Sarah, and he removes anyone who attempts to approach her. What makes this account significant is not the supernatural framing, but the social consequence. With each death, Sarah becomes more isolated. Her community begins to fear her. Suspicion replaces sympathy. Shame accumulates. The demon's influence extends beyond the bedroom into reputation, identity, and belonging. Asmodeus does not merely kill husbands. He cuts a person off from connection, using love itself as the mechanism. This theme becomes even clearer when traced further back to ancient Persia. In Zoroastrian tradition, a spirit known as Eshma embodies fury, frenzy, and the violent disruption of order. Eshma attacks rituals, prayers, and family bonds, anything meant to stabilize human life. He is not subtle. He overwhelms. But as religious systems evolved and merged, this raw force was refined. When Eshma passes into later Jewish and Christian demonology, something changes. The violence narrows. The chaos becomes targeted. What was once indiscriminate fury becomes directed obsession. The destructive impulse no longer needs to shatter everything. It focuses on what matters most. Eshma becomes Asmodeus. This transformation is crucial. It reflects a growing recognition that the most dangerous forces are not those that destroy openly, but those that operate within accepted structures. Marriage, desire, loyalty, these are not attacked, they are repurposed. Early demonological texts repeatedly place Asmodeus near moments of union rather than conflict. He is associated with weddings, consummation, and commitment, not because he represents pleasure alone, but because these moments offer maximum access. They are points where trust is assumed and boundaries are lowered. By the time Asmodeus appears in later traditions, his danger is already clearly defined. He is not feared because he causes chaos. He is feared because he prevents wholeness. He interrupts connection. He isolates individuals inside relationships. He turns what should bind people together into something that drives them apart, quietly, persistently, and without spectacle. These ancient warnings are not metaphors layered onto a demon after the fact. They are the foundation of his identity. From the beginning, Asmodeus was understood as a force that corrodes human bonds from the inside. And this recognition leads directly to the next question. If this danger was so clearly understood, how did later traditions attempt to confront or control it? Among the many figures said to have encountered Asmodeus directly, only one is described as successfully restraining him rather than falling under his influence. That figure is King Solomon. In the Testament of Solomon, a text that blends Jewish tradition with later demonological lore, Solomon is granted a ring engraved with a divine seal. This ring is not merely a symbol of authority. It represents alignment with a higher order that supersedes demonic power. With it, Solomon is able to summon spirits, compel their obedience, and force them to reveal their names, functions, and limitations. When Asmodeus is summoned, the encounter is notably different from others in the text. He does not plead. He does not rage. He does not attempt deception. He submits. This alone signals the nature of his danger. Under compulsion, Asmodeus explains his role with clarity. He speaks of jealousy, of division between lovers, of disruption not through violence, but through erosion. He admits to haunting the marriage bed, not as a voyeur, but as a destabilizing presence. Where union should occur, he ensures fracture. There is no shame in his confession, no resistance. He does not see himself as rebellious. He sees himself as functional. Solomon's response is equally revealing. Rather than destroying Asmodeus or banishing him permanently, Solomon assigns him labor. The demon who undermines bonds is forced to assist in the construction of the temple, an act of imposed order. Stones are carried. Foundations are set. Sacred space is built with the strength of a force that would otherwise tear connection apart. This is not mercy. It is containment. The narrative does not present this as triumph. Asmodeus remains dangerous even while restrained. He insults Solomon. He mocks human weakness. He warns that when authority fades, so will restraint. And when the seal's protection weakens, he escapes. What matters here is what the text does not claim. It does not say Solomon reformed him. It does not say Solomon cured the influence he represents. It does not say the danger ended. Instead, it presents a temporary balance, power holding power in place for as long as conditions remain exact. Control is shown to be possible, but fragile. Authority must be absolute, focused, and continuously maintained. This is a pattern repeated throughout demonological literature. Asmodeus is not overcome through confrontation alone. He cannot be frightened away or overwhelmed by force. He can only be restrained through clarity, discipline, and alignment with something stronger than impulse. The moment attention slips, he returns. This is why later traditions do not emphasize banishment when dealing with Asmodeus. They emphasize self-command. The danger he represents mirrors a vulnerability in human behavior, the tendency to confuse intensity with truth, possession with love, control with care. Solomon's encounter does not teach how to defeat Asmodeus. It teaches why defeating him permanently may be impossible. And this realization sets the stage for his final transformation, one that moves him from restrained adversary to sovereign force. By the time medieval grimoires take shape, Asmodeus is no longer treated as a disruptive spirit lingering at the edges of human life. He has ascended. His role is formalized, his authority codified, and his danger fully acknowledged. In texts such as the Ars Goetia, Asmodeus appears as a king of hell, commanding legions rather than acting alone. This elevation is not symbolic inflation. It reflects a recognition that his influence operates on a structural level. He is not a chaotic force that must be contained. He is an organizing principle of corruption. As a king, Asmodeus does not rush. He does not hunt indiscriminately. He governs. Descriptions of his appearance reinforce this shift. He is often depicted with 3 heads: man, ram, and bull, each representing a facet of domination. The human face reflects intellect and persuasion. The ram suggests stubborn pride and sexual assertion. The bull signifies brute strength and endurance. Together, they form a composite authority, reason, desire, and force unified under control. His iconography is not monstrous for shock. It is hierarchical. He arrives mounted, crowned, accompanied by attendants. This is not invasion. It is courtly presence. When Asmodeus appears in ritual texts, he does so as a sovereign receiving petitioners, not as a beast being provoked. This distinction matters. Asmodeus does not reward recklessness. He responds only to those who already mirror his traits: ambition, fixation, certainty. Grimoires repeatedly warn that summoning him requires unwavering control, clarity of intent, and absolute discipline. Hesitation is not merely failure, it is exposure. Those who approach Asmodeus seeking pleasure alone are dismissed. Those who approach seeking power without self-command are consumed. The texts describe vanished summoners, fractured minds, lives that achieved every desired outcome only to collapse under the weight of what they became. This is the essence of his danger at this stage. Asmodeus no longer needs to corrupt from the margins. He corrupts through reward. He sharpens desire into ambition. He refines ambition into obsession. He grants influence, knowledge, and access, but each gift narrows the recipient further. Success does not free them. It binds them more tightly to the pattern. Unlike demons who punish disobedience with violence, Asmodeus punishes through erosion. The more someone aligns with him, the more their world contracts. Relationships become transactional. Empathy weakens. Identity becomes fused with outcome. The self is no longer flexible, it is fixed around need. In this way, Asmodeus becomes less a demon of temptation and more a custodian of excess. He governs the point where drive surpasses restraint and turns inward, consuming the structure that once gave it meaning. This is why medieval texts do not portray his reign as chaotic. They portray it as ordered, efficient, and deeply destructive in ways that are difficult to reverse. By the time Asmodeus is crowned, the ancient warning has fully matured. The greatest danger is not desire itself, but desire given authority without balance. And this leads to his final evolution, one that no longer requires ritual, belief, or invocation at all. Asmodeus does not disappear when belief systems change. He does not weaken when grimoires are forgotten or rituals abandoned. Unlike many figures in demonology, his survival does not depend on invocation. It depends on repetition. As societies moved away from overt demonology, the behaviors once attributed to Asmodeus did not vanish. They were reclassified. Obsession became pathology. Possession became control. Corruption became addiction. The language changed, but the pattern remained intact. This is why Asmodeus adapts so easily to modern life. He no longer needs the marriage bed as a literal location. He appears wherever attachment overrides judgment. Relationships defined by surveillance rather than trust. Ambition that demands constant validation. Desire that no longer tolerates restraint. These are not rare conditions. They are normalized. In ancient texts, Asmodeus was said to haunt intimacy because intimacy provided access. In the modern world, access is constant. Attention is fragmented, desire is amplified, and boundaries are porous. The conditions that once required ritual preparation now exist by default. This makes his influence harder to detect. There is no moment of summoning, no dramatic turning point. The shift happens incrementally. A preference becomes a requirement. A habit becomes a dependency. A goal becomes an identity. What once felt optional begins to feel necessary. And because modern frameworks often isolate these patterns from their symbolic roots, they are treated as individual failures rather than structural ones. The person believes the problem is personal. They work harder. They double down. They tighten control. This is precisely how the pattern sustains itself. Asmodeus thrives in environments where intensity is rewarded and restraint is treated as weakness. He flourishes where success is measured narrowly and attachment is encouraged without reflection. In such systems, erosion is mistaken for dedication. This is why contemporary demonology often reframes Asmodeus not as an external entity, but as an internal shadow, not a being that invades, but a force that aligns with existing drives. He does not impose desire. He amplifies it until it becomes singular. Importantly, this does not reduce his danger. It increases it. When a threat is external, it can be confronted. When it is internalized, it must be recognized. And recognition is difficult when the influence feels authentic, when obsession feels like purpose, when control feels like responsibility. Asmodeus endures because modern life continually recreates the conditions he requires, not through superstition, but through structure, not through ritual, but through repetition, not through belief, but through behavior. He no longer needs to be named. He is active wherever self-command erodes quietly, justified by desire and reinforced by reward. And this leads to the final warning, one that ancient texts hinted at, but never stated directly. Asmodeus is not dangerous because he overwhelms the will. He is dangerous because he rarely opposes it. He aligns with what you already want, then narrows it, until nothing else remains. Resistance fails because his influence is gradual. Small permissions feel reasonable. One compromise becomes habit. By the time consequences appear, the choices feel entirely yours. The danger is not desire itself. The danger is when desire becomes unquestionable. Modern life offers fewer boundaries. Attachment becomes identity. Ambition defines worth. Control masquerades as care. These are the spaces he occupies, not as an invader, but as a mirror. He reflects excess until it feels natural. He does not need to be summoned. He enters through repetition, justification, and the slow surrender of balance. He waits where limits are ignored and reflection is replaced by urgency. Asmodeus does not announce himself. He lets you believe you are in control, until control becomes the thing you can no longer release.